Good morning, happy Thursday, and welcome back at long last for another episode of The Hunt. Today, I am joined by Brian Sedita, our admin recruiting expert. Brian, good morning. How's everything going?
Good morning. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Excited to be on my first episode of The Hunt.
Yeah, nice rainy day to kick things off, too.
Perfect out there.
Yeah, no, well, it's great to have you. For those tuning in for the very first time, this is our weekly show dedicated towards helping candidates navigate the job market, which now more than ever is posing some different challenges than ever before. And this episode is meant to be interactive. So use the comment box throughout the show. You only have Brian's attention for a very short time, and then he's back off working magic in the recruiting world. So use the comment box throughout the episode. Ask your questions. We'll be fielding those questions throughout the show, even just to say hi and tell us where you're listening from. So thanks for tuning in. And today's episode, the reason Brian's here is we want to do an episode to give back to those professionals who spend their careers supporting others. So now it's time to support you. And all the admin professionals out there have been facing a really interesting landscape in the hiring market. And this episode is catered to giving you the advice and guidance that you need in a very short time frame to be able to completely transform your job search. And Brian, as a recruiting expert specifically in the administrative field, is the best person out there to bring it to you. So Brian, you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, awesome. So, I think the first thing that I just want to touch on very quickly, for a lot of people out there, if you're in the administrative field watching, a lot of people are wondering and concerned. COVID happens. I know we don't want to use that word anymore. No one wants to hear it. But a lot of companies go remote. Office styles are changing. And from an ignorant perspective, I would think that why do you need a receptionist if you're no longer in the office? Or why do you need the same level of executive assistant if executives aren't traveling as much? Or, so I would worry if I'm an administrative professional out there watching, what's the state of the job market for me? And are a lot of opportunities going away because of the way the world has shifted?
Well, I think that's a great point, but I would like to say from my perspective, I think that the hiring market for admins, administrative professionals is definitely hot. I would say that, just the needs may have shifted and changed over the last couple of years since COVID. I think in terms of travel seems to be, from the people that I've spoken with, travel seems to really be getting back to those pre-COVID levels, especially international travel is now back and up and running. And I think that another way that things may have shifted in the past couple of years is now everybody is working from, if people are working from home or hybrid, everybody might be in different time zones. And so the coordination level that an EA or an administrative assistant now needs to coordinate really has leveled up in a different way, because maybe they need to coordinate Zooms, maybe people are dialing in from anywhere in the world, right? So I think staying on top of those things and keeping your senior level management or your executives that you support in the know about those things are definitely prevalent now and essential to operations.
Wow, that's a really interesting point, because I didn't think about that, but then I think about myself. I don't even remember which days I'm coming into the office or not anymore. I don't remember which employees are working remotely, who's in different time zones. A lot of companies out there are hiring remote employees from different parts of the country. So if I'm an executive, I can't even manage my own schedule. Now I have to think of different time zones and timelines and calls. So to your point, maybe that's some silver lining for all the administrative professionals watching, Margaret, Wafa, whoever else is tuning in, that there's probably more need than ever to have someone with the right skill set. So that's great to hear. So now it's about, how do you get noticed, and how do you get attention for the right jobs that you want, and how do you position yourself ahead of the competition when you're kind of interviewing for those jobs? So let's start with getting noticed, right? And for hundreds and hundreds of years, the resume is that entry point into a job. So what do you see? You work with administrative professionals all day long. You become an expert in that area. What do you see as the biggest areas people can improve upon or use to their advantage to be more marketable solely based on their resume?
Yeah, so I like to think of the resume as your package before you actually get to meet somebody, and how are you presenting yourself in that package, whether it's, and that should be reflective of the type of executive you are, and that means organized, professional, attention to detail, really making sure all punctuation, all that kind of stuff is in line. But I have three things that I notice or that I try and check off when I'm looking at resumes and try and really figure out when I'm looking at them, and they should be really clear and stick out to me. And so those things are who that person supported, whether you're an office manager, you're supporting the whole office, you're an executive assistant, exactly what type of executive you're supporting, if you're supporting a team, and then dates, month and year. I think that that's so it's so good to be transparent and open with the dates, making sure that all your dates check out between LinkedIn and your resume. And then if you do have movement on your resume, really, if you have a solid, tangible reason for leaving a position, whether that be an illness, tending to a sick family member, maybe you left to because the company, especially in the last 2 years, companies have moved locations, or maybe you moved to a different part of the country or the world. I think having clear reasons right next to your dates is always helpful for the person that's reading your resume, just to kind of construct the narrative and connect the dots between your positions, so that you're kind of leaving out those open-ended questions that people on our side of the table may immediately think of when they look at movement or dates on a resume.
Yeah, that's an awesome point. For those out there watching, Sunil, good morning as well. Thanks for tuning in. And again, throw your questions in these comment boxes as we're going throughout the show, so we can touch on those as we go here. But if you're out there watching, one of the first things that recruiters look for, we get resumes all day long. We have to be efficient. One of the first things we look at is job movement. And how many times have you changed jobs? And without any context to that, the initial assumption is you're either not performing well, or you get antsy too quickly and leave jobs too fast. And that's a red flag. So take that assumption out of the equation. And Brian, that's an awesome point. If it's something that was out of your control, or something to deal with a family member, especially over the past 2 years, company had layoffs, whatever it is, take the guessing game out, put that in parentheses right next to that job, so that in a quick glance, I can see, even though you moved jobs 3 times in the last 2 years, it was all for very relatable reasons. And now, okay, now this person's a viable option. So that's awesome advice, Brian. So then once you get noticed, and once your resume is really getting you in the door, now you got to nail the interview. And I think administrative professionals face very unique challenges in terms of the interview strategy than someone might in a corporate job, or a finance job, an accounting job, a tech job. It's a real unique area. So what advice do you have? What are the biggest areas that someone can really drive home on an interview if they're an administrative professional looking for that dream job?
Yeah, so much of that administrative professional is going to be reflective of the person that you're supporting. So especially when you're going into an interview, you want to, again, just like you did with your resume, show your full package in terms of the type of person that you're going to be supporting them, making sure that you're communicating in a really concise and focused manner, and organized in your thought process, and really being just pointed into what exactly you did in each position. So I always like to start with the pie chart theory, as Kevin has now coined it. It is describing your role in thinking of it as a pie chart, and divvying it up into different slices based on how much focus you spent and towards each duty that you have, a responsibility in your job, right? So everybody might have the same things, especially executive assistants or administrative assistants. Everybody's doing the same thing, but each job has its own sort of, it requires a different amount of attention for each position, each person that you're supporting, and to really give the person on the other side of the interview a good sense of just how much time you spent doing these things and how much experience you actually have in these things. It's great to think of them as percentages in this pie chart. And so when you go on an interview, you could say, I did expenses, 50% of my role was expenses, 25% was arranging travel, another 25% was ad hoc, other things having to do with special projects, right? So I think that really, and thinking of the way that you're presenting your experience in your interview should also be reflective of that pie chart. So if 50% of your role was doing expenses, you should really talk about and give a solid amount of time and attention to expenses and how you did that in your interview. And if you really only spent about 5% of the time doing expenses, maybe don't go into it as much. You don't have as much experience in doing that. And so I think that will really give that person on the other end a solid picture, because everybody could really see that pie chart when you start talking about it and the imagery that comes with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Sarah has a question. So I'm assuming Sarah's referring to the the guidance you gave in putting the reasons for movement. So Sarah asked, what about temp jobs that don't go perm due to budget cuts? Is that something that you would also include, on the resume next to the reason for leaving?
I think definitely mentioning that it's a temp position to show that you weren't there for a short amount of time, on an open-ended basis or a perm basis is important. So I think definitely noting that next to the dates that it was a temp position.
Yeah. All right. That's awesome. Sarah, hopefully that helps. Putting that out there takes away any assumption that the automatic assumption, if you don't put that, this was a permanent role that didn't work out in 3 months, 6 months, whatever, and they're judging you based off that. Take that guessing game out.
And not all temp positions are meant to go perm, right? So I don't think that that's an assumption on our part that something didn't work out at that temp position that didn't go perm.
Yeah. Take that guessing game out for sure. So going back to the interview, Brian, you mentioned personality fit, right? And I'm a little ignorant to this. I'm more on the accounting and finance side, but I have to imagine personality fit with the executive is so critical. So is there anything that people watching can do when they're going into an interview to meet with an executive? Not that you want to change their personality, but is there anything that you could do to get a feel for who this person is or what they're like? Or I don't know if that's cheating, but is there anything that you've advised people to do or seen people do on these interviews to get ready for the type of executive and who they are?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to think of it this way. You know what you've done, you know what you don't know. And especially when you get to the stage of, if the interview process is a couple interviews long and then you finally get to interview the person that you're going to be supporting, I think at that point, everybody has the same skills to a certain degree and everybody has the same kind of experience to a certain degree. And so you want to let your personality really take over and stay professional, of course, but you want to let that personality shine through, be your authentic, genuine self, and really see if that person, and you should be interviewing the person on the other end as much as they're interviewing you in a sense, to really understand whether or not this is a good vibe, a good match in terms of working style, just personality and energy, who you are as a person, maybe passions outside of work. I always think that that's a great question to ask the person that you're going to be supporting, just to get a sense of who they are outside of work, because everybody's a human being outside of work. And I think that if you get along in terms of personality, that's great. But if you don't, and it doesn't go your way because of that, I like to say that that's completely out of your hands, right? You can't really change your personality. So if things don't work out, I think that that's such a critical part of executive assistant work, is that personality, that vibrant personality that somebody should really bring. Or maybe that executive needs somebody that's a more cool, calm, and collected person, and that's just not your working style. So what doesn't work for one company might work for another, and that's exactly why it's just going out on as many interviews as you can to really figure out what's going to be the best option for you and for them.
Yeah, that's an awesome point for everyone watching. Don't force it. If it's not a good fit personality-wise, don't try to change your personality to match them, because that can only last so long. It's like if I was going out on a date and I knew what this person kind of liked, and I completely changed everything about myself to try to impress them and fit with them. Eventually, my real self's going to come out, and it is not going to be a good situation. So you're just delaying the inevitable and setting yourself up for failure.
And that goes for totally everything in the interview process, being completely open and transparent to a professional degree, of course, not really getting to personal life if that's unnecessary. But I think being open about exactly what your skill sets are is just going to set you up for success down the line. Keep expectations, realistic.
Yeah. Now, last question, is it weird or creepy? And again, keep the questions coming. This is great. I hope we're able to help out everyone for your individual situations that you're dealing with. So keep those questions coming in the comments. Is it weird or intrusive if I were meeting with a CEO at a company? Odds are I could find speaking engagements they've done or appearances they've made or news articles about them. Is it weird or intrusive to bring that up and I want to impress them that I did my homework, or even just to see their personality type? Is that weird to bring up, or is that something that's positive? What's the rule of thumb there?
I'm sure everybody's going to have their own opinion of whether or not they feel personally invaded by that. But if it's out there, in my opinion, if it's out there on the web, it's open territory, right? Anybody has access to it. And I think if I were the person on the other end of that interview, I would be impressed that that person went out of their way to really find out what I'm all about, what my company's all about, and my work. And I just think that that's kind of going the extra step in showing that you did your homework, and that's going to be reflective of the type of worker you're going to be, an employee, that you're going to go that extra mile to kind of make sure that all that information has been fielded before actually going into a conversation or a meeting with me, right? I think that shows a really good solid worker.
Yeah, and I don't want to be offensive here, because I know these roles are so demanding, so hard, and so challenging, and they get overlooked a lot of times in the administrative area. So I have nothing but respect for everyone out there in that field. But to a certain extent, my assumption would be most of these candidates are going to talk about similar things. I handle the travel, I manage their calendar, I book their meetings, I do all the expense reports, I'm their gatekeeper. So I guess you got to find some way to set yourself apart and be a little more memorable, because otherwise everyone's probably going in. You supported a senior executive, someone else supported a senior executive. So everyone's doing the same role. I got to think it's doing something that stands out. Whether you did your research more on the executive, or you just click better personality wise, but there's got to be some kind of tactics there.
And I think going into your interview, like you just said, listed all those tasks that every executive assistant probably has done. You want to go in there and say that with eagerness, vibrancy, a bright, positive energy that's going to be reflective of the type of worker you're going to be. Somebody that's going to want to get the job done, somebody is going to want to be in the same room with, or work with on a daily basis so closely. Again, it comes back to personality and how you're reflecting, even if, and I think just having that vibrancy doesn't have to be reflective of your personality. It just has to show that you're confident. It shows that you're eager. And those are just, I think, key things for any interview, regardless of if it's an administrative role.
Yeah, I got to imagine like any job. Yeah, there's some tasks that are a little bit more monotonous and others that are exciting, but you got to be just as eager to do both. So
low-level tasks, high-level tasks, it doesn't matter. It's all in the same package, right?
Yeah, whatever you got to do to add value. So Sunil, thank you for the question. If you could rephrase, I just want to make sure we're giving you the right answer on your question so that I'm understanding properly. So if there's some way you could rephrase just in terms of what your question is and how we could provide that advice, I'd love to help you out while we're here. But before we wrap up, again, if you have any more questions, throw them in now. But any closing advice? So we talked about the resume, getting those 3 things you mentioned put together and making sure those are on point. Talked about the interview, the pie chart theory, trademark, advice personnel. No one can use that same jargon to reference that theory. So please, I don't want
to shout out to Aaron Greenberg for that analogy.
Yeah, Aaron with the shout out. I don't want to deal with any litigation. I want to protect everyone out there. So, but outside of those factors, we got the resume, the interview. Any closing thoughts, comments, advice, motivational boost for those out there that are watching, looking for an administrative role, trying to find that right fit? What are the closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think just being open to any and all possibilities, right? I think you can't really shut down an option if you haven't followed it through or given it the proper amount of attention or time to really consider. So whether that means originally on your job hunt, you were looking for fully remote, have to be honest, I don't see a lot of fully remote EA or administrative assistant roles, right? So I think even just being open to going into the office a couple days a week will really widen the net of opportunities that you're going to be able to pursue and at least hear out. It doesn't mean you have to take the job just going out on an interview for something or having that conversation. But I think, you could really find something you love that maybe you wouldn't have even considered just by opening your mind a little bit, even in terms of compensation, especially if you are out of work right now and are looking for a new position and you want to have the same, I get it, you want to have the same compensation than you had in your last position, or perhaps even a little bit of a higher bump, to feel that progression. But just being open to the fact that, when you start in a new company, you're starting, whether or not you're in an entry-level job, you're still starting at, the ground floor in terms of where you can go at that company and the runway that you have in front of you. So I think being open to maybe taking a little bit of a pay cut in order to then have that room for growth down the line.
Yeah, no, I think that translates to really any sector right now. You find the right fit with the right people and the right team and the right role and the right growth path. A little bit of money now is going to pale in comparison to where you're going to be in terms of happiness and probably financial success long term. Job you're happier at, you're going to work harder, you're going to enjoy it more, you're probably going to do a better job, and you're going to get rewarded more for it. So long term versus short term. But Brian, I can't thank you enough. I hope everybody out there watching enjoyed, took something away from this to really help with your job search. If you're an administrative professional out there, thank you for what you do. You're the backbone to a lot of companies, and we got to make sure you get into a place that fits with what you're looking for. So if you have any questions, you weren't able to watch the live show, you're watching this after, reach out to Brian. Brian's contact information is tagged to this post. You can message him, connect with him on LinkedIn. If you're looking for a job or looking to hire the right administrative professional, reach out to Brian. He's amazing at what he does. Brian, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I look forward to coming back on the hunt soon.
Awesome. We look forward to having you back. And everyone, make sure you like, comment, and share this with anybody in your network that's an administrative professional looking for that dream job. As always, reach out to me if you have any questions. We're here to help. But thank you for tuning into The Hunt. Thanks for all those who commented with questions. And we'll hopefully be back next week or maybe the week after. I might be on vacation next week with a brand new live episode. Everyone have a great rest of the week and enjoy the holiday weekend.